The night of October 2nd, 1996, was supposed to be a routine journey, one of many flights that connected the bustling city of Lima, Peru, with the southern heart of South America, Santiago, Chile. On board, Flight 603 passengers settled into their seats, oblivious to the fate that awaited them. The flight crew, experienced and prepared, went through their final checks, unaware of a small but catastrophic flaw that would soon cause the plane to spiral into tragedy. As the Boeing 757-223A, registration OB1698, powered down the runway at Jorge International Airport, the night sky stretched out ahead of them. The air was cool, the stars bright. At 22:34, the plane lifted off the ground with a steady hum, climbing into the vast, dark expanse of the sky. But just moments after takeoff, something went wrong. As the aircraft gained altitude, the flight crew began to notice strange readings on their instruments. The airspeed indicator seemed to be malfunctioning, jumping erratically from one speed to another, while the altitude readings appeared to be wildly inaccurate. The pilot and co-pilot exchanged confused glances. Something was off. The flight was supposed to be smooth routing, but the instruments were saying otherwise. They were flying blind. Unbeknownst to them, static ports, the crucial components that provided the aircraft with vital data on speed and altitude, had been blocked. It was a small obstruction, but it was deadly. During the plane's last maintenance check, adhesive tape had been accidentally left covering the static ports, a minor oversight that was destined to lead to catastrophe. In the cockpit, the confusion grew. The pilots attempted to troubleshoot, adjusting their instruments, calibrating their readings, trying to find a way to make sense of the distorted information before them. But without accurate readings, their attempts were futile. The data on which they relied, speed, altitude, and rate of climb, were all lies. They could no longer trust their instruments. The airplane's autopilot disengaged. The crew, now struggling with their instruments, attempted to regain control manually, but they didn't realize that the readings on the instruments were showing false information. They didn't know they were already in a dangerous situation. The readings showed that they were climbing, but in reality, the plane was in a slow descent. Minutes passed, each one filled with mounting tension. The aircraft's altitude continued to fall, even though the crew thought they were gaining height. It was a classic case of instrumentation failure, but in the cockpit, the pilots were trapped in a cycle of confusion, trying to correct something that wasn't wrong. By 22:40, less than 10 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft vanished from radar. The pilots, still struggling to comprehend their true position, had lost control. Somewhere in the darkness, over the cold waters of the Pacific Ocean, Flight 603 fell. The aircraft crashed into the ocean, killing all 70 people on board, including 65 passengers and 5 crew members. It was over in an instant. The investigation. In the wake of the disaster, a massive investigation was launched to determine the cause of the crash. What happened to Flight Lilian-san? How could a routine flight end in such a horrific way? What went wrong? The answer, as investigators soon discovered, was a combination of instrument failure and human error. The tape that had blocked the aircraft's static ports had caused the airspeed and altitude indicators to malfunction. These instruments, crucial for flying, no longer reflected the true state of the plane. As the crew relied on these faulty instruments, they unknowingly allowed the plane to descend slowly into the ocean. But it wasn't just the malfunctioning instruments that led to the disaster. It was the lack of proper maintenance procedures and a failure in communication. The adhesive tape was a simple mistake, a small oversight during routine maintenance. But that mistake cost 70 lives. It was a tragic reminder of how small errors, seemingly insignificant in isolation, can snowball into catastrophic consequences. The crew, caught in the fog of misinformation, never had a chance to recover. With no visual reference and no way of knowing what was really happening, they simply couldn't save the aircraft. Their final moments were filled with confusion, frustration, tension, and the terrifying realization that they were fighting an invisible force. One they couldn't comprehend in time to save themselves or their passengers. Aftermath. The world would eventually learn of the tragic fate of Flight Lilin-san. Families mourned the loss of loved ones. The aviation community, stunned by the simplicity of the error, reevaluated their safety protocols, especially when it came to ensuring the proper functioning of critical flight instruments. The airline that operated the flight faced mounting scrutiny, and in the years that followed, it would struggle to recover. By 2001, the airline was out of business, its name forever linked to one of the most devastating accidents in Peruvian aviation history. In the end, the story of Flight 603 is a somber reminder. Aviation, a field reliant on precision and attention to detail, leaves no room for error. A simple mistake, a forgotten piece of tape, caused a chain of events that no one could have predicted. It's a reminder that in aviation, lives depend on the smallest of details, tales that can often be the difference between safety and disaster.